Let's take a look at Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 255. And this chapter is really a showcase for Miguel. We get to see why this guy is not just a rope merchant, and he really is crazy strong. And a lot of people weren't expecting much from Miguel just because Miguel was working with Geto on top of him being a character that just got beat on the whole time. But fighting Gojo and not dying instantaneously, even if you are getting your ass beat, is a pretty good feat, even if he did have the black rope disrupting Gojo's Limitless. And to the shock of a lot of people, another character from Geto's old group shows up with LaRue, a character I completely forgot about because quite frankly, I just didn't care at all about this guy. But we do get his curse technique, and his curse technique is incredibly goofy, and I'll get into it more later, but we see it at the beginning of the chapter holding Kusakabe with a giant hand. And Sukuna, who is still on the street below, is able to immediately recognize that Miguel was utilizing his curse technique to bail out Ui Ui. And we then get a pretty interesting flashback where we cut over to South Africa where Yuta is there to convince Miguel to help them fight Sukuna. And I like this scene a lot. I like getting to see characters outside of Japan. JJK for the most part is very contained, so getting these moments of the greater world is pretty cool to me. Especially with Miguel rocking this Gojo fit, and we get the reveal that he is in fact bald. He tells Yuta in this scene he has no interest in fighting a guy that might kill Gojo, and really, can you blame him? And Miguel is pretty straightforward with Yuta here and just tells him, I'm not even capable of that, why even ask me? Yuta still tries to explain to him that the merger could be a threat for everyone, and Sukuna should be tired out even if Gojo does lose, but Miguel is just not buying it, going so far as to tell Yuta that fighting the merger creature is preferable to fighting Sukuna. And I think that's pretty fair because he has no idea whether or not the merger creature will leave Japan, let alone go to South Africa. Sukuna, on the other hand, pretty much everybody in Jujutsu society knows about this guy. I'd be shocked if Miguel didn't. But he does start to get guilt-tripped by LaRue, who says that they should honor Geto like they are visiting his grave by giving their all in this fight. A requiem for the heavens, and Miguel corrects him saying, you mean hell, right? Because Geto definitely went to hell. And as funny as that line is, I really like that we get to see Miguel recognizing that Geto's plan was evil. And both he and LaRue say they joined up because they liked the man Geto himself. It wasn't just because of his plan, it was because they liked the guy. They wanted to make him king, and I think that makes them look a little less stupid in retrospect. But even with this context, characters as cool and pragmatic as Miguel following Geto, it is a little goofy. I think it will always be that way. I think that Geto primarily suffers from being a JJK0 villain, and if he was present in the main series more, I think his whole goal would have a lot more depth to it. So it's no surprise that Gege Akutame tried to give more context to his mental state in Hidden Inventory, but you kind of seal the deal on being a shithead when your last words are doubling down on your monkey hate. But after all of this Geto talk, Miguel does agree to go on the condition that both Gojo and Yuta have lost and Sukuna cannot use his domain. And clearly there is a lacking student-teacher bond between these two, because Miguel pretty much tells Yuta, I'll go when you're chopped in half. Good luck, kid. But we cut back to the present with LaRue and Miguel preparing to fight Sukuna as they start to take a look at all the injuries he has received from Gojo and Yuta. With lowered RCT output, 2 non-combat functional arms, and a heart that is unhealed along with no domain. And from the way they react to this, it sounds like this is better than they even expected, so they think they have a pretty good shot of taking on this guy. So they just immediately jump his ass. We see LaRue bring out his CT, the giant hand, the worst telekinesis. The way it functions is he is able to summon this hand and slap people around with it, grab onto things, do whatever a hand can do. And if it gets destroyed, he is able to rebuild it as many times as he wants, though he takes 10% of the damage back to him. And this mage hand from D&D is actually pretty strong. He is able to use it to slam Sukuna into a wall. It has a lot of strength behind it, but this whole I take 1/10 of the damage back to me, that sounds kind of terrible if I'm being honest. Imagine you summon Pikachu, and Pikachu is like Pika-Pee, and he goes on in, and then a bus comes out of nowhere and just rams Pikachu. But 10% of that bus annihilating Pikachu was enough to kill you too, so you both die. So you have to be pretty careful where you send your hand, and in the case of LaRue, it seems a little better because he is pretty tough. And it does also say he's able to grip his target's technique, and that sounds pretty good, but I'm just not a big fan of my minion summon making me suffer. They fight him with the giant hand until the hand is chopped in half, and then Miguel is forced to dodge through Sukuna's slashes. And this really is just a crazy feat, and a feat that pretty much nobody expected from Miguel. And it gets even crazier when Gojo says that with no CT involved, if it is just a bare knuckle fight, Miguel will beat him in the short term. Because Miguel's curse technique, Hakuna Lana, lets lets him buff his own physical capabilities while nerfing his opponent. And this also explains why Miguel was doing pretty well against Gojo once he got the black rope, because it kind of evened them out for a bit. And because of this, Miguel goes in on Sukuna, he starts fist fighting him, and Choso is standing up on the balcony looking like Batman is shooting down a piercing blood. And things really just get wild from there. Yuji jumps in from the rooftop, shattering the glass, landing right on top of Sukuna, who's a little surprised he's still around. Only for Maki to also show up and chop off his arm because she's healed from the Black Flash, once again to the surprise of Sukuna. But what I really want to touch on here is that we find out that the actions of Gojo permanently nerfed the space cutting dismantle. Prior to killing Gojo, to perform the world cutting slash, all he had to do was use the hand sign from Malevolent Shrine. But when Gojo nuked Sukuna and Mahoraga with a hollow purple, Sukuna lost one of his arms and he was forced to make a binding vow instead. A binding vow that lets Sukuna use the world cutting slash a single time without any hand signs or chance, at the cost of every single future use of the world cutting slash having additional steps to perform. So at the moment, Sukuna is stuck using his hand sign, his chance, and he has to direct the world cutting slash with his palm to perform it. So that is a pretty big hit, and I really like this because it makes Gojo's sacrifice a lot more important, because he pretty much stopped them from getting utterly nuked 24/7. And Yuji is aware of the requirements for the world cutting slash, and I'm not really sure how, maybe I missed something, but it just seems like they're guessing here. But he makes the age-old protagonist mistake of assuming they're going to win because he says, oh, Sukuna can't use his hand sign anymore, he doesn't have reverse curse technique. All of our hard work is paying off, we're gonna win, and then Sukuna puts in his AirPods, plays his own theme song, and black flashes Rue. And the narrator reminds the audience of the fact that Gojo brought back his RCT by using a second black flash, and in the case of Sukuna, it is left a mystery for next chapter. And the obvious implication here is that he just got his RCT back, and really, he needs it now more than ever because he is looking pretty mangled. And there was also some very suspicious dialogue of Sukuna talking about the flavor of a curse technique. Maybe he'll use the giant mouth from chapter 213 again that he used to eat Hana's arm. When I first saw this thing, I figured, okay, it's just a visual representation. A lot of people thought he was just using his original form to do this, but now we know he can only incarnate one time, and it is permanent. And this weird enlarged head was present at both the end of chapter 213 and the opening of chapter 214, so I have to wonder if he's about to eat someone. People have been theorizing about a cannibal CT or a chef CT for so long, and with all the talk of flavors of humans and flavors of curse techniques, I can't blame them. It is one of the oldest theories about his CT for a reason, and he has been a known cannibal the entire series. I wouldn't be that shocked if this is actually the case, especially with the obvious parallels to Yuji with things like his Black Flash, and Yuji who is now gaining power-ups by once again eating people. And aside from this, I assume we're going to see a Malevolent Shrine from Sukuna pretty soon. The Malevolent Shrine has been hinted at quite a few times now, and them getting out of this, that'd be a pretty interesting scenario. Something else I want to touch on is the Gojo page of his eye opening up. People are talking about Gojo coming back now more than ever. As for my personal opinion on this, I don't really care if Gojo comes back, but if he does come back, I just don't want it to be stupid. If it's something like Ui was out there teleporting people back for a necromancy ritual, I am not going to be satisfied. And my overall feelings on this chapter is that I do like this one a lot. I like it a lot more than when I originally read the leaks. The leaks actually had me feeling like it was a 6 out of 10. A ton happened this chapter, and Gojo may have said some things, some potentially less than savory things, but I'm not sure if YouTube will even let me talk about that, and even if they do, I don't feel like finding out they don't by re-recording. And many people are getting annoyed that Sukuna is so strong, but it's probably going to get a lot worse before it gets any better, if it ever gets better. Sukuna is currently in the middle of a character arc that ends with him finding satisfaction in another person. And as much as I like Miguel and Kusakabe, side characters like these are not the ones who are going to beat Sukuna. So when people say that JJK is becoming repetitive or they feel like it's filler, it's not that they know what's going to happen next or who's going to show up, it's that they know where they're probably going to end up, which is a body bag, or in LaRue's case, a Black Flash victim. So those are my thoughts on chapter 255. Malevolent Shrine is probably coming. I think that is definitely in the works. They'll probably have that as a big end of chapter event, and if Gege Akatame really feels like trolling people, just have us cut over to Hikari versus Urame. But that's all I've got for this one, guys. If you like content like this, subscribe for more, and as always, thanks for watching.